Welcome to the BNB. Today we'll be discussing about Airbnb once again. We've already made a video on Airbnb where we're talking about the financial metrics and the business model and everything. Today I'm going to dive into it once again because I believe the stock itself has fallen. And I personally want to reassure everyone that this company is strong, well positioned, and I want to go into its business model. And then afterwards, I'm just going to give out some financial details. I'm not going to go dive into it. I've already done that in the first video. So if you're really interested of knowing how the company's revenues are doing and how it is operating, you will be able to see that in the first video. So first of all, in the business model of Airbnb, if you're not familiar with Airbnb, it's an international company that almost everybody knows. It's a place where you book a room or a property for a little while, exactly like a hotel, but it's done by people and not hotels. So for example, if you have a vacant place where nobody is living, you can put some furniture and everything inside and have it as a Airbnb property, Airbnb room or whatever. Now I want to talk about in detail about the networking effect the company has. So for example, if people want to go into a region for a festival or some event is happening in a certain region, let's say for example the Bitcoin that was happening in Miami, Florida. So people were booking hotels in Miami, Florida for the convention, for the Bitcoin convention. And a lot of people were booking some Airbnbs, and most of the time Airbnbs are cheaper and better aesthetically. I prefer Airbnb because I've went into hotels similarly priced to a Airbnb, and I've seen that the Airbnb was better quality and aesthetically was more pleasing. In hotels, mostly you just see a bed and a TV, not so fancy, but and it's for the cheaper price. If you go expensive, you'll obviously see the best kind of rooms like the Wynn Resort rooms and whatsoever. But Airbnbs, you can find the same quality of a $1,000 hotel room into a $200 a night room. So that's why I believe Airbnb is better. Now also, they have a very strong brand. So the application, the website, if you go on it once, you'll be able to navigate through it easily, and it's aesthetically pleasing. So you go on the website, you see that it is actually something that you will personally want to go once again if you go to another place. But beforehand, the bread and breakfast website was not as aesthetically pleasing, and it wasn't very strong. So people, what they just go in once, and then they were not so pleased, so they wouldn't go again, and they would rather book it on a hotel. Now also, something that's really, really good about the business model of Airbnb is something we saw during the COVID pandemic. So the Hilton, the Sheraton, and all these big hotels had to close down their properties due to the pandemic, and they had overhead costs, so they were paying the cost of these buildings standing. But unfortunately for Airbnb, they didn't have any of this. So the people who were hosting on Airbnb had their property and they were just living there. They were coping the price rather than have Airbnb do it. Or in the other spectrum, the hotels were actually taking the overhead costs. But unfortunately, that is something Airbnb lacks into too, because if they don't own the property, they don't see the appreciation in the real estate of those properties, rather than these hotels seeing appreciation in their properties. So that's something to consider too. So they're missing out on the real estate appreciation, but they're well hedged against all these black swan events. Or for example, if there's a fire in a particular region, and that means people are not going to visit that place for sure, or there's an earthquake or some unfortunate event happening in those particular region, Airbnb doesn't need to take the overhead cost. The people there who own those property will be taking the overhead costs, but they're not. But on the other spectrum, Airbnb is not seeing those real estate appreciation, there's gains. Also, Airbnb has the opportunity to expand into many new markets. One market that they've chosen to expand is experiences. So for example, if you want to go on top of a building or whatsoever, get a good view, you can book it through Airbnb. That's an experience. And that's something Airbnb is doing. The market for that is huge, around 1.4 billion. They're expected to have market shares worth up to 1.4 billion within a couple of years. Also, there's no customer concentrations. For example, if they're in the whole wide world, so they're not relying on one company or one set of people. They're worldwide, and that's something that is good for them. That's something that most Wall Street investors love to look into. There's a particular company that is very, very reliable on one company. So that if, for example, if that company cuts ties with that other company, unfortunately, they will see some negative impact on their financial, and if the concentration is too huge, they might even go out of business. Financially, they have $6.6 billion invested and they're free cash flow positive. And also, the three owners, the three founders of the company own around 45% of the company. So they have the incentive to grow it as much as they can. So the management will do their best to grow the company in their possibilities, because it's going to help them financially too. So they're financially incentivized to help themselves and help the entire company. So this was it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, I hope you subscribe to the channel. That was a small talk about Airbnb. It's been going down. The market has been falling recently. It was most of them are the retail stocks. The huge techs such as Google, Facebook, and Apple have been growing. I saw Apple was at around 123 2 weeks ago, and now it's at 149. I would say congratulations to all the Apple investors, and I hope you like this video.